If you keep finding yourself in unhealthy relationships with emotionally unavailable or toxic partners, and as a child you felt unseen, unheard, or emotionally neglected, there's a good chance that you have an abandonment wound. It's the part of you that hijacks your choices in love and leaves you feeling out of control and keeps you stuck in a cycle of attracting the same kinds of unhealthy and toxic relationships again and again. Today I'm going to teach you one skill that will completely shift this pattern for you. And it's not about trying to change your thoughts or break mental habits. This skill is about working with the abandonment wound in your body and nervous system where the wound actually lives. And when you do this, you will stop self-abandoning and start making healthy romantic choices with partners who are consistent, safe, and emotionally available, because you yourself feel more aligned and stable and safe in your body to be open to real emotional connection. Like Kate, who used to call herself a human pretzel, she would twist herself into whatever shape she thought would win someone's love. Years of talk therapy hadn't helped her break the cycle until she learned this skill that helped her heal her abandonment wound in her body. Now she feels at peace and acts in her own best interest in relationships and is okay with being alone. She says it's the first time in her life she truly feels like she's got her own back. And if you want to get to the same place as Kate, this is exactly what I support my clients to achieve within 6 months. Book a call with me in the link below so I can get you started on that journey. It's ironic that if you have abandonment issues from childhood, that you'll then be attracted to the types of partners who inevitably abandon you. Your abandonment issues may have come from outright abandonment in childhood, or more commonly, subtle emotional neglect by caregivers who were emotionally unavailable to you. And you weren't able to develop a secure attachment with them, and instead you now carry a deep set of fears and wounds around potential abandonment, which means you'll always be scanning for signs of abandonment in your relationships, or you'll outright sabotage or mess up something that is healthy, like you'll abandon them before they can abandon you. This type of insecure attachment can also mean we latch on to unhealthy or toxic partners because they produce the same feelings inside us that we felt as a child with our caregivers who weren't there for us, because that's all we know love to be. And that looks like inconsistencies and red flags and just uncertainties in the dating phase that a securely attached person would just frankly be turned off by. But because you were raised in an inconsistent way, you miss these red flags entirely and are actually attracted to the uncertainty of it all. And that's because your body is wired to experience love as inconsistent, chaotic, and uncertain. And this produces high highs and low lows in your body, the same way you experienced it as a child. And so you'll actually find healthy partners boring because these conditions aren't present when you're dating. You think you're just not in love, but this is actually your pattern. You have an abandonment wound running the show, also called the wounded inner child. It's like a young, scared, frozen energy inside you who's calling the shots. Her sticky hands are on the steering wheel. She's desperately trying to get her connection and love needs met from the same kinds of people who caused her trauma in the first place. Now, if you're feeling abandoned, you're in your wounded inner child. As Terry Real states, only a child can be abandoned. A mature adult's emotions during a divorce or breakup or death would indeed be intense, one with grief and sadness, but it wouldn't carry that same childlike sense of abandonment. So healing is a question of how do we allow this young part within us to mature so we can process the breakup or abandonment in a more healthy, mature way. And that skill is called titration. Titration is a term borrowed from chemistry, a common lab method used to determine the unknown concentration of a solution by reacting it with a solution of a known concentration. In this context, the known concentration state is a safe, grounded, resourced sense in your body. And then you shift to the unknown, which is this abandonment wound or trauma in very small doses so that you don't actually flood or overwhelm your system. You're able to shift between the two, and that allows you to dissipate the abandonment trauma within a safe container where you don't get blown outside of your window of tolerance. Now, outside of your window of tolerance is where you sob uncontrollably, or you shut down, you go numb or freeze. This can re-traumatize you. So titration is a type of controlled exposure to the difficult, uncomfortable, and messy feelings of abandonment when they are being triggered, as opposed to what you'd usually experience when you're being abandoned, being cracked open and overwhelmed with abandonment grief when a breakup happens or a betrayal betrayal, and you suffer so much you feel like you'll die without them. You're sobbing uncontrollably, going down a spiral of shame. You might spend days, weeks, or months in a depressive state because you're constantly diving into that abandonment trauma again and again. It's like knowing that the stove is still hot, but you can't help yourself. You keep putting your hand on it, and eventually you start to acclimatize to being totally overwhelmed with emotion. But there are severe consequences to living in this state: lack of sleep, high cortisol, chronic depression, anxiety, serious health conditions. So titration allows you to touch the edges of your trauma and let the steam release out gradually, like letting a little steam out of the kettle instead of opening the lid and getting completely burned. Now, to do this skill successfully, however, you need to have a good baseline of safety in your body to switch to and from when working with your abandonment wound. This likely is the hardest aspect of learning titration because the abandonment wound issues come from childhood and you're probably in a chronic state of fight and flight. You don't really know what it means to feel safe in your body because you didn't learn that as a child, and now you don't have that baseline in your body as an adult. And at the moment for you, that person who's abandoned you is actually your safety, right? They've broken up with you, they've left you, and you've given your heart to someone who just isn't safe. So your body is now wired to think things like breadcrumbs or sex or any kind of basic connection with them will give you the dopamine hit that you've interpreted to be safety. Because to you, any kind of connection makes you feel good in your body. It's you reaching out to that hot plate, even though you know it will burn you, just so you can feel that rush of dopamine or connection with them, which is always followed by the after effects of being burned again and again. Now, here's the thing about dopamine. That feel good, those little hits of connection with them, isn't true safety in your body. Dopamine might feel good in the moment and it gives you a rush, but it doesn't last. And it's reliant on an external circumstance of being in connection with someone who is the source of your hurt and is by definition the most unsafe connection you could be relying on. Your body is wired to only feel safe when getting that dopamine and connection. Now, you might also be replacing that connection with alcohol or overeating or sex and other ways to get dopamine as well. But here's the good thing. You can rewire your body and nervous system to detox from these strategies and find self-contained strategies that are safe and grounding to your body and nervous system. Resourcing is by far the best strategy to start to develop safety in your body. And we do this by coming into attunement with your nervous system and learning how to resource it, which means to find internal resources or feelings of comfort or states of regulation that help you feel more stable, safe, and supported without the need of external connection. To do this, you need to learn what it feels like to complete the stress cycle, because at the moment you are stuck in this either on state of chronic fight flight or down in this state of depression, shutdown, dissociation. And we've got to learn what it is to come back into this very natural state of coming inside and outside of activation within our window of tolerance here, so that it looks something a little more like this. You might get triggered and you go into fight flight, and you can naturally settle and go into the parasympathetic. And at no point are you going outside of your window of tolerance. You're just able to waver between these two every day. This is what it means to complete the stress cycle when we come out of the sympathetic and settle. This is something that we don't learn how to do if we're in chronic states of fight flight, because we get stuck on and then get overwhelmed and dumped down, and we're always outside of our window of tolerance in some way. Now, I teach this a lot on my channel, and specifically to do this by learning self-soothing exercises. Today, I want to go into more nuance around self-soothing, because you've actually got to learn how to pay attention to the signals in your body at a micro level for them to really be effective. You might feel a little bit of relief in the moment when you do the self-soothing exercise, but your attention and your attunement over time, the more micro it is, the more long-lasting those effects are going to be. So I want you to take any of these self-soothing exercises here. Take a screenshot right now. Just go through each of them one by one and find out which one is actually going to work best for you in the moment. And really give each of these a good go. Pay attention to your body at a micro level when you're doing this. For example, if you're doing a self hug or a butterfly hug, which is just where you put your hands over your body, I want you to pay attention long enough this might take you maybe 10 breaths or so until you actually do a yawn or have a big sigh or feel a downward movement inside your body or a tingling sensation. This is actually a type of energetic discharge your nervous system does to shake off pent stress and come back into regulation, much like a dog would shake itself after a stressful interaction with another dog. There will be a few on this list that your nervous system interacts with better, so I want you just to go through and find out which ones you really respond to, and make sure whilst you're doing these, particularly these creative resources and these emotional resources, you are paying close attention to your nervous system and you're doing the exercise long enough to notice when there is a response from the nervous system. The reason people fail doing these self-soothing exercises is because you are so overtly triggered, and it's like you're just putting a band-aid on it by trying something, and probably your inner critic speaking up really loudly saying, this is stupid, this doesn't work for me, my trauma is too big. But that's largely because of these parts within you, and also the fact that we're not used to attuning more deeply to the signals from our nervous system. So when you try them, just ask your inner critic to give you space, right? If it's judging it for being silly, and just do the activity for 10 breaths at least, right? Hold yourself for that time. Pay attention to the body signals. Wait for that energetic discharge, which is a yawn or a sigh or a downward movement. And this is you successfully completing your stress cycle in that moment. If you practice that 5 or 10 times a day, you will start to downregulate your stress state and increase the flexibility of your nervous system, because you're creating safety in your body by doing this, instead of being stuck on in that fight flight and running your maladaptive behavior patterns that keep you reaching out for that hot stove again and again that will burn you. Instead, you're establishing a safety baseline in your body, and you're then going to be able to practice titration. So titration involves working with the trauma in your body. So please be discerning about whether it's appropriate for you to do this on your own, or you might need to do it with a therapist or a coach. If at any time you get worse doing this or get overwhelmed or flooded, please stop immediately and reach out for professional help. So you're going to ground yourself in the safety that you know you can establish in your body by practicing one of the techniques you already know works. Do this until you become familiar with the signals in your body that you feel safe. Your heart rate is slower, the breathing is slower, you feel more grounded, relaxed, and present and calm in yourself. Then allow yourself just to feel a fraction of that abandonment trauma from the safe space in your body. It's like you're aware of this really big mass inside of you, but you're not going to dive into it. You're just going to touch the edges of it. Track how your body and nervous system changes, and immediately practice coming back into safety. Just one repetition of this is enough for one sitting. And what you might observe is that it was a very clunky transition. When you went to feel your abandonment trauma, perhaps you went too far into it and you got overwhelmed and flooded and shut down. And that really comes from habit. That's where we're used to feeling all of our emotions and letting them out. Perhaps we've been told to do that, or we self-harm with repeated thoughts and we replay that abandonment again and again. This only halts our healing process. The love language of our nervous system is slowness, and it is safety. And our body can only process so much at a time. So you have to have this really solid baseline of safety in your body, and only let a very little amount of it that you're going to come into contact with and touch, whether it's the emotion you feel yourself or it's a sensation in the body. Just imagine you're touching the edges or just brushing the edges of that abandonment trauma or emotion. So if you want to try it again, get back to your baseline of safety and really rest in there until you feel grounded and confident that you've got a hold of that safety. Then shift your awareness to that abandonment trauma, but just touch it again lightly, just the edges of it, just a small taste of it, and then back away to safety again. Now, as you come back into safety, notice how you feel in your body and your nervous system. Did you manage to come back to safety okay? No movement here is too small, right? The smaller, the better. And you're going to want to go bigger and more, because that's our tendency when we're on this healing journey. But you need to go slowly, because you are building up tolerance so that you can come back again and again and get more comfortable with feeling more uncomfortable emotions without getting overwhelmed and shut down. But you've got to really notice if you are numb, shut down. Maybe all of this activity has completely got you offline and you're just not able to feel anything, let alone establish safety as a baseline in your body. I don't recommend this exercise. It's perfectly normal to not be able to do this work on your own. So please do seek out assistance through a therapist or a coach, someone who's trauma informed and whose nervous system you can co-regulate with to get into safety. Now, this is the work that I do with my clients. I help them to co-regulate. I help them to go through all these tools, and I would love to help you work with and heal your abandonment trauma. If you'd like to know more about how to work with me, please book a call through my calendar in the link in the description below. In the meantime, here is some next step videos for you to watch so you can move one step closer to having a healed, whole relationship to yourself and secure relationships with others. And for now, I will see you in the next video.